We did a few Zoom training sessions over the last couple of weeks, and quite a few of our clients asked for a copy of the recording. So I thought it'd be helpful just to do a mini version, just with a little bit of a recap of some of the key points. What we're looking at is the challenges likely to be coming up over the next few months. And just in exactly the same way as it has been over the last year, the challenge most venues are facing is looking after their couples while also looking after their reputation and their business needs. So trying to get the balance of the three. And whatever comes out of the Prime Minister's roadmap announcement on the week commencing 22nd of February, what we can be fairly confident of, I think, right the way across the industry, is there's likely to be some sort of restrictions for whenever weddings are able to reopen, whether that be through the activities that we can do or the numbers that can be there. And at the moment, we're able to discourage couples from postponing out of panic, because they know that it's only going to be a few more weeks until they get a little bit of an idea as to what might be possible in that roadmap, but that inevitably will be the trigger for quite a few people making decisions. So as a general rule, you can't go wrong if you put your business right in the middle of that triangle. So thinking about getting a balance between what is going to work for your venue, your couples, but also your suppliers, and taking everything into consideration. The particular concern we're looking at the moment is the survey results we have from early on in January from 6,200 couples. Initially, this is looking at the number of guests they had initially planned to invite, and the chances are that any pricing and contracts that were negotiated with your couples would have been with this in mind. So almost all of them looking for more than 60 guests, and quite a lot of them, in fact, looks like around half were planning on having over 100 guests. We actually had an average of 109 coming out. So what is now happening is, under number restrictions, now we don't at the moment know whether there's going to be number restrictions, whether it's going to be numbers dictated by capacity, but the assumption is that weddings are going to be slightly smaller over the next few months. But what's well worth being aware of is, unlike this time last year, where most couples were saying they would wait until they could have the wedding they had originally planned, a huge number of couples would be prepared to go ahead with much smaller numbers now. So typically it's around 48% would go ahead with 30 guests, or a staggering 84% if 50 guests could be allowed. Now this is looking specifically at numbers first. We will look at other activities as well. The benefit, obviously, in these weddings going ahead is that you're getting an income coming into the venue straight away. But that's only going to be helpful if your couple's expectations are aligned to yours on what you're likely to be charging. And the couple's expectation, this is looking at venues offering catering as well, is almost 3/4 of them are expecting to pay on a pro rata basis. So in other words, if they're only allowed 50 guests and they're booked for 100, they're expecting to pay half price. Perhaps more surprise is when it's the hire only venues that nearly half of their couples thought that the same would apply. So obviously, as a hire only venue, you've had no less costs incurred in delivering that hire, but the expectation from the couple is very different. In the scenario we're likely to be facing, where the wedding can go ahead, but perhaps not exactly as planned, the CMA stance seems to support the idea of a pro rata reduction. However, at this stage, before the Prime Minister's roadmap that we're being promised on the week commencing 22nd of February, the only thing we've got to go on whether or not a contract at the moment might be deemed to be frustrated is the Prime Minister's previous statement that he was expecting weddings from Easter onwards, and also the task force pushing forward for weddings from Easter onwards. So at the moment, it would be quite hard to argue that any weddings after Easter are at the moment frustrated. And as such, the CMA's recommendation doesn't include an expectation to offer a refund. That would only be the case if the contract is frustrated. So if you're not able to come to an agreement on an appropriate amount to be charging couples if they're wanting to go ahead with a slightly smaller wedding, it's perhaps worth just bearing that in mind before we get that roadmap, in case you're wanting to encourage that postponement. Of course, it's not just about numbers. You'll know your couples well enough to know what their priorities are likely to be, or will be able to communicate with them to find out what's going to be important. And for you as a venue, perhaps one of the things you'll be trying to work out at the moment is what's likely to be able to go ahead as normal. And if you know for your couples that the music and dancing is really important, and realistically you don't feel that that's going to be happening, and at the moment we do not have any information to guide us one way or another, but if you personally don't feel that that's going to be realistic in April, and that wedding isn't going to be what the couple had expected or paid for, again, it's worth just considering whether it's better to be encouraging to be moving that date. The other element that's going to be coming into that is whether or not it's the first time that they've attempted to get married and when they originally booked. If they booked last year, it's quite likely that they were going to be quite happy with the idea of having their wedding perhaps in the shadow of coronavirus and with slight restrictions, and that is still a large number of these couples that we're looking at over the next few months. This is their original date, but equally, if they're booked in 2019, they will be expecting the perfect fairy tale wedding perhaps, and that may well influence your decision on how you work with that couple. So the possible options you're looking at, and this really is now down to your venue to work out the policies that work for you. The three main options that venues are going to be going for is either accepting the lower numbers, accepting that there may be restrictions, accepting that there may be a risk of going in and out of tiers and what the implications are of that, but encouraging couples to go ahead with their booking if they're comfortable to enable postponement, make that as easy as possible so that that is an attractive option, or in those the cases where it is going to be more appropriate to manage their cancellation expectation. And sometimes it is better just to free up that date for another couple. So looking at postponement, couples seem to be far more flexible than they were this time last year. Far more are comfortable with the idea of going for an off-peak date, but watch out for that 11.9%. Those couples, although they weren't given the option of cancelling for a full refund, we didn't want to put that idea into their minds. Almost all of those that had chosen other and then left a comment were saying that they would expect to cancel and would expect to get a full refund. They've got to the point where they've just had enough now. Before coming to an agreement on the postponement, please do bear in mind the other elements that the couple will be juggling. The main reason that it's so important to be doing that this time round is that a lot of dates now are, as you will know as a venue, already booked up for the suppliers. And what's happening is where the couple rush to agree a date with the venue and don't check with the photographer, their planner, their caterer, their band, whoever else is involved, and find that they're unable to move. Because the contract isn't frustrated, they're then being charged according to terms and conditions. And even if it is frustrated, they're still incurring quite significant costs. So looking at these graphs of these are the costs incurred using photographers and celebrants as an example. And this is the amount of costs incurred 8 weeks before the wedding. So the point at which very often couples are postponing. And you can see with celebrants, for example, that's a large amount of the costs have already been incurred at that point. All of the planning has been done. And that's fine if the couple are postponing and take the celebrant with them. But if they have to cancel because the celebrant's not available, all of that has gone to waste, and the couple is inevitably then being charged for that. We mentioned about watching out for the 11.9%. And those couples that are choosing to cancel, and the best way of handling those to minimise your costs and minimising any disputes with couples. And the most important point on this, I would say, is be transparent as early as you possibly can with reasonable costs. And the reason for this is we know that the CMA advice is misleading. The couples are reading it that it means they can get a full refund because the wording says that there may be costs deducted. And it should perhaps, certainly in my opinion, be saying in most cases, reasonable costs will be deducted. But because couples are going into this believing that they may get a full refund, it's leading to a very tricky situation where they then feel boxed into the corner. They've come into you, they've said we want to cancel, they've asked for a refund, you're then on the back foot explaining why they're not going to get their refund. They already feel that they've spoiled their relationship with you. So anything you can do to save that relationship, just calmly explain to them what costs have been incurred, why those costs have been incurred, but ideally actually letting them know before that conversation takes place. If they know that it's going to be 30% of the payments they've made so far, or whatever it might be that you have worked out is reasonable in their case, if they know that as part of their options, they're far less likely to jump into that cancellation decision. And if you are negotiating on that cancellation, it is absolutely fine to discuss a reasonable time frame for refunds. In the original CMA advice, they actually touched on this and advised couples to be prepared that they wouldn't get an instant refund because of the disruption caused by COVID. So have a chat to your couples and hopefully you can come to a solution that helps you protect your business and the interests of your future couples as well as looking after them. So in our Zooms over the last couple of weeks with our clients, we looked a lot at the opportunities and how to make the most of them. But for this session, we'll just have a look at a couple of areas. First of all, the importance to be aware of how many weddings are in the pipeline. And also something everyone needs to be aware of is what is important to your vulnerable guests. So the factors of primary importance to help vulnerable guests. The most important one is this top one, assurance that COVID safety guidance is being followed. Simply following the rules is going to be really, really important, and showing couples that you're following the rules. And this is going to be reassuring to make sure you can maximise the number of weddings that take place. Couples know that they're safe having their wedding in the shadow of COVID, and also maximising the number of guests. And that's going to make a big, big difference to your profits to give that reassurance. The work that we've been doing on here is collaborating with various associations, having a look at what other sectors and industries have been doing. And we've put together a Wedding Safe industry standard that we'll be launching in the next few weeks. Nobody wants the industry to be regulated in the long term. But by doing this within the industry, what we're hoping is that we can reassure couples, guests, and local authorities just while it's needed. So in the meantime, anything that you can do to reassure couples and guests that their prepayments and their health are safe in your hands is going to really, really go a long way. So as a final note, I just wanted to put this in as a final reminder. Just the fact that you're watching this means that you are committed to getting your policies right, looking after your couples. And although inevitably all we tend to hear about are the problems, and when we have couples that perhaps have got into a dispute. It's really easy to focus on that, but actually it's only 2% of couples that are unhappy. We are getting it right. As an industry, we are doing really, really well. So let's keep doing it and keep looking after our couples and our businesses. And if you've got any questions at all, don't hesitate to email either myself or one of the team. Thank you very much.